Farmers are feeling more buoyant under the coalition government. Well, Brent, why is this?
Well, look, I guess largely it's because of what the government has done around sort of regulation. It's getting rid of some of the pressure around, for instance, emission reductions, made it clear farming won't go into the emissions trading scheme. They've been given another number of years out till 2030 before any pricing regime comes in, and other regulations around fresh water and the like, where they are basically easing the pressure on farmers and relaxing that regulatory what farmers saw as huge regulatory pressure that put both time pressure on them and cost pressures on them. So even though, farming's not going great at the moment in terms necessarily of, the amount of money they're getting paid for their products, that's eased quite a bit of pressure, and it's shown up in, some of the surveys around farmer confidence. Not that they are, through the roof and but they're a lot more positive, but still somewhat subdued than they were under the previous Labor government.
What was the mood like at the Primary Industries Summit, which you've just been attending?
Yeah, look, I think it was, I wouldn't say it was buoyant and really, really upbeat, but I think probably, as I say, people are more positive. They seem to think the change of government's going to be much better for farming, as I say, particularly around easing pressure around meeting those emissions targets, which, federated farmers had campaigned on for quite a long time, campaigned against. And the view that a lot of them have is that, New Zealand farmers are the most carbon efficient in the world. So, what more do they need to do, if you like? But equally with that, came a warning, for instance, from Rabobank that, don't sit on your laurels because the government has eased the pressure, because the pressure of overseas markets and customers, particularly the large food companies that are buying New Zealand products, they want to see more positive steps taken to reduce emissions. And if you don't do it, you could face the possibility then of some sort of trade sanctions, if you like, or people not buying your products because of that.
Is it clear, though, what happens from here?
Yeah, well, that was the thing, actually, and particularly around things, what will be put in place now around emissions, because the government has now set up a new primary production group to talk that through, so it's not clear what will come out of that. And also, I think people at the conference showed a lot of interest in Resource Management Act reform and what will come out of that. And it was interesting because, federated farmers made the point that they're not that interested in the fast-track legislation, which, the government is sort of pushing ahead with now at the moment, because, as they say, that's for the big end of town, not for small businesses that most farmers run. So they're much more interested in the long-running change to the RMA. What will that mean for them? And the other interest they have is, will it be enduring? Because as I think a couple of people pointed out on various panel discussions, this government has come in and completely rejected, scrapped a number of policies and legislation that the previous government put in. So presumably a new government, whenever that might be, could do the same to what the coalition is doing. So there's still a sense of uncertainty, I think, for farmers about, will this be it? When we get these new RMA laws into place, etc., will they be enduring? And it was interesting, that question was asked of Rachel Brooking, the Labor Party spokesperson on resource management, on environment, and she kind of said that she'd made an offer to Chris Bishop, the RMA Reform Minister, about some sort of bipartisan approach, and she said, we'll wait and see. And of course, there are still big differences between the two major parties on how they'd approach that issue.
There's not much that can be done about those policy reversals other than, you say, is getting a bipartisan approach, which is not easy, is it?
Well, yeah, it's not easy to get, but with things like resource management reform and also infrastructure too, those are long-lasting things. And I think there is general appreciation, probably across all parties too, but certainly at the conference, that to have some sort of really long-term plan around those things where people had certainty about what was going to happen is really important. So, it will be interesting whether any sort of political or bipartisan approach can be found. You'd have to think between Labor and National. The Green Party probably would sit beyond not agreeing to sorts of changes that Labor might agree to, if you like. And on the other side, probably ACT may not necessarily, but could the two major parties compromise a bit and reach an agreement on some sort of, say, for instance, plan for the RMA, which would be enduring because the two major parties supported it? I mean, that would be an interesting political thing to say, and the same on infrastructure. So, there are some challenges, and for the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, it might be that he thinks, well, let's get all these changes into effect. I mean, they're moving quickly to scrap everything, and now let's get the changes into effect. And his argument might be, or hope be, that by the time there is a change of government, the new legislation around and the new policies around infrastructure, RMA reform are so entrenched and successful that a future government wouldn't tinker too much with them. But again, that was Labor's hope when it was in government.
MBR is offering a special July-only deal, $399 for a year's subscription. So you'll be able to find me on mbr.co.nz.